Okay. Thank you for coming to this workshop for the publication process and job market preparation. And I also appreciate Dr. Jonathan and Dr. Bay, for helping us to expand our understanding about the publication process and the job market preparation. So please start.
Yeah. Did we decide who's going first? I don't think we talked about that.
Pardon me?
I said, I don't know if we decided who's going first, but Hazel, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Doesn't matter, but I thought the job market was first somehow, but are you ready?
Yeah, if you want to go first, that's fine.
No,
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't matter really.
So can you start from publication process first?
Oh, okay. So there
Yep.
was an order. Okay.
Okay. Let me pull up some things. Okay. Oh, can you enable screen share?
Okay, let me. Okay, now you can share.
Okay. Move that. All right. Hi, everybody.
Jonathan, we are looking at your speaker presentation view.
The wrong thing.
Just in case you wrote something. Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
right view.
All right. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Jonathan. So I'm the new assistant professor in math education for the department. I have met some of you, but I have not gotten the chance to meet all of you. So I hope over the next couple of weeks or so, I'll get to know more of you. And yeah, reach out anytime if you need to follow up something about the talk or just want to talk about math or STEM education in general. I'm more than happy to meet and chat with you guys. Based off the survey that was sent out about topics that you guys would be interested in, one of the things was publication. And we have sort of a range of folks that are in the department, sort of like where you are in terms of your milestones and things like that. So I figured we'd go over sort of high level view about the publication process. And then any questions that you have, feel free to drop in the chat and at any point, and I'll try to keep an eye on those and maybe Dr. Bay can help me out with that. And then, yeah, if we need to go into more specifics, we can do that. So before we get started too far in the publication process, I just want to do a quick little plug-in. So this spring semester, ETAP 8050 is going to be offered, and that course is teaching and learning in the STEM disciplines. So it's really a learning theories course and about epistemology and STEM, and thinking about that, what are some big theories in STEM education and that have guided the work, and also takes somewhat of a learning science perspective. So I hope that will interest some of you guys. Feel free to sign that up in the spring. And if you have any questions about the course, just let me know. So first, I thought we'd start with the question, why do we publish? So take about 30 seconds or so, open up your chat box in Zoom. Don't send anything yet. We're going to do a quick little waterfall, but take about 30 seconds, load up the chat, and kind of think to yourself, why do we publish? What's the purpose of publishing? So I'll give you about 30 seconds. And then when I say hit send, send in the chat. All right, give me about 10 more seconds. All right, go ahead and hit enter. We'll see what you guys come up with. Okay. Looks like we've got talk about meaningful findings to an audience, share research, share your work with others, contribute to the field, get a job, tell others about our work, conceptual or methodological. Yep. Get a job again. Yep. Academic contribution. All right. So let's think about that. So a lot of you are hitting on some of these ideas of why we may publish. And a lot of you talked about contributing to the field, right? You have something that you think is worth sharing with others, and you feel like you found some gap that hasn't been talked about or thought about in your field. Or maybe you're seeing something, maybe some discrete pieces that are in your field, and you can really see how to bring these two pieces together that haven't been brought together before. So, right, that's one reason why we may publish. Another is communication and dissemination of ideas. So it could be not necessarily contributing to the field, but it could be communicating something about your field to a wider audience. So for example, writing in a way that disseminates research to practice, for instance. So it could be dissemination on multiple levels, right? Depending on who your audience is. Maybe it's taking your research ideas and thinking about how you can communicate that with practitioners, with policymakers, with others that maybe be adjacent to your field. So, right, I'm thinking about like AI research right now. A lot of it is communicating learning science research with computer scientists, or communicating learning sciences to instructional design and technology folks. So thinking about how you may communicate your work broadly with those outside of your field as well. We talked a lot about getting a job, and that also goes with tenure and promotion, right? So depending on where you see yourself and where you end up, tenure and promotion may look different in terms of the requirement. So your publications may look different at an R1 institute like UAlbany versus maybe a more teaching focused institution. So your publications and where you may publish may look different. And last is thinking about impact and outreach. So taking your research or taking your scholarship and thinking about how does it make an impact for the field? So, or not for the field, but like for social good. So thinking about how you may leverage your research and turn it into PD, and talked about that more broadly. Or how do you talk about your research to policymakers and helping them shape policy for education on a national or international level? So those are just some of the reasons why we may publish. Now thinking about, hopefully you're thinking about where you want to publish. And one way we can think about that is in academic publishing is the journal outputs that you do. Now, depending on your field, there may be different avenues beyond just journals in which you publish. So for example, if you're in computer science or computer science education, a lot of that publication is necessarily not in proceedings, or sorry, not in journals, but rather in proceedings. So let's see. In terms of journals, we can think about it in terms of this pyramid. So you may have what's called top tier journals. So these are the journals that are like high impact for your field, and these are widely recognized. So depending on your field, hopefully you have a good sense of what are those top tier journals. If you don't, you may want to communicate with others in your field that may be experts. Second one is not necessarily a top tier journal, but maybe it's second tier, or sometimes called a mid tier journal. It's still sort of well known, but it may not be what's considered the top tier, like highly respected, right? It's still respected, but it's not the top one in your field. And one way you can kind of see this is it may have a lower readership. Then you have what's called a bottom tier journal. So for example, it may be published less frequently, so maybe once or twice a year. Sometimes these are student-ran journals. So for example, at my PhD institution at the University of Georgia, we had our own student-ran journal. It was like not as well recognized as maybe a second tier or top tier journal, but we published twice a year, and it was still acknowledged as a journal that was contributing to the field. So a lot of times these third or bottom tier journals may just be student-run journals, and they don't have a lot of resources, so they can't compete with like a mid-tier or a top-tier journal. And then you have non-peer review journals. So for the most part, these are somewhat sometimes called vanity journals. So these are just journals in which you pay to get your work published out there. Or sometimes these could be what's called predatory journals. So they're just coming and they're seeking you out in order for you to get your publications out there. These are generally not considered very well respected, and you generally should avoid anything that's non-peer reviewed in terms of publishing in academia. All right. When you're also thinking about where, you may want to think about going to that journal's website, checking to see, does it say peer reviewed somewhere on the website? And then you may also want to see, are they publishing any sort of metrics about that journal? So one metric that they probably will publish on there is impact factor. So for example, we have the AERJ journal right here, and you can clearly see on their website, they're publishing their impact factor for the and also the 5-year impact factor. So typical metrics that you may see are like the site score, the SJR score, Web of Science, H5 index. There's a lot of different metrics to see like what is a journal's sort of impact on the field. Generally, it's probably Web of Science or it's probably SRJ. And again, depending on your field, for most education journals, an impact factor of like 5 is generally conceived like that's pretty good. A mid-tier journal is probably going to be like a 1 or a 2. Anything below that is probably going to be considered a bottom-tier journal. When also thinking about where, just ask colleagues, see where they published, ask their perspective, like, hey, what is the top tier journal for our field? If that's something that you haven't maybe scoped out yet or figured out yet, ask those that are experts in the field, hey, what is the top tier journal for our field? Also, hopefully you've been exposed to some high quality work in your courses, right? Look and see, like, where are those journal articles being published, right? If it seems like it's a high quality research study and you're evaluating the methods and the writing, hopefully you're going to sense, yeah, this is high quality work. And then go and look and see, hey, where was this published? And then in terms of where you want to publish as well, understand the audience for the journal. So who does this journal speak to? Does it speak to practitioners or does it speak to researchers? Does the journal speak to teacher educators, or does it speak to teacher educators that are researchers? Think about maybe it doesn't even speak to those audience. Maybe it speaks to educational policymakers, right? So be cognizant of like, who is the audience for the intended journal? And usually you'll find that on the website. Seeing that you're all, graduate students, if you want a paper idea, I think this, if you look at this article as a sort of a model, I think this is something that's all within your wheelhouse and within your scope, like right now. And it's really a highly cited journal in math education about the journal quality in the field of math education. And basically, it was an opinion-based study, really. So asking experts in the field of math education, I'm like, hey, here are some journals in math education. How would you rank them? And so it's getting sort of an opinion-based study on the field of how is the field seen, what is the top rated journal in the field. So I don't know about science education. I don't know about English ed or other fields, but this is probably something like that's easily accessible in your wheelhouse. And this has been pretty highly cited in math education to like justify tenure and promotion and things like that. So this could be helpful down the road for you, right? If there's something not like this out there, hey, maybe think about doing this. So that way you can use it in your tenure and promotion justification of like why you publish in these venues. And then regardless of like where you publish, just make sure you're understanding the quality of that journal and how it's going to affect you in terms of tenure and promotion later down the road. So depending where you end up, some departments or schools are very specific about what they're looking in terms of what counts as a high quality journal. Sometimes that's left to interpretation. So again, like I mentioned before, you may want to have some sort of justification or backup or rationale, like what are the high tier journals in your field? So for example, the article last slide, and then also this slide as well. And again, this is another study that's easily, I think, within graduate students' wheelhouse, just using some of those metrics that we saw before and looking at the common journals in the field of math education, and then talking about how do you assess the quality of the journal. So again, if there's not something like this in like your field, you may want to look at this paper as an example, and again, set yourself up later down the road for tenure and promotion. Something else to consider when you're shopping about like where you want to publish your work, understand the cost and the time associated with that journal. So I think the biggest one for you all is right now is like time. I can remember like the first paper I published, it just got stuck 2 years. Part of it was because of the pandemic, but part of it because the journal was in the midst of changing up their board, which I didn't realize when I submitted the paper. So it was a paper that was submitted, then the board changed. And so I had to wait and get re-established with a new editor. And so it just slowed down the process. And then the pandemic hit. So even though they may publish how long it takes in review, it could be a lie. So just be cautious. Ask others that have also published with that journal and just say, hey, were the editors pretty responsive? Were they able to do things in a timely way? Just to get a sense of how long your publication could be sort of in limbo. And then right now, costs for open access. That's something just to keep in mind, especially if your work is funded by like the National Science Foundation or NIH. Those are now being required to be open access. And so thinking about that and yes, sort of putting those costs in your budget. All right. So let's say you submitted your journal. Now what? What is sort of the general process of what happens next? So ideally, I didn't put this on there, but it typically goes to a managing editor. And that person will usually look at the abstract, look at the title, maybe skim through your articles, see what kind of references you have. And then they'll make a recommendation, send it on to the editor, or the editor may send it on to an associate editor. And then it's really the associate editor's job to think about sort of what is the quality of that work? Does it meet the audience of the journal? If it doesn't meet sort of the audience, you'll typically get what's called a desk rejection. Sometimes you get feedback from the associate associate editor about that, like why it was desk rejected. Sometimes you won't. You'll just get desk reject. So typically when you see that, that's usually just an indicator it just wasn't a good fit for the journal. How you framed your work didn't speak to its audience. If the editor thinks it's sort of a fit, then it'll typically go to reviewers. And that's usually 3 or so reviewers. The reviewers will sort of make their assessment, right? Feedback to the editor and also to the authors. And then the editors sort of compile that and think about how they'll assess the work. And so, for example, if you want to talk about or talk to an editor and maybe see what that process is like, you can talk to Dr. Zhang, who's currently the editor of the Journal of the Learning Sciences. So if you want to sort of pick an editor's brain, I think that's a good one to pick. And again, sort of that process is what I laid out here. So you'll sort of get a quick skim, see if it passes sort of the audience test, and they're going to select reviewers. Again, the reviewer is going to write up their feedback to the editors and the author. The editor will then make a recommendation to accept or not, and then you'll get your feedback. And that's usually typically around a 3-month process. All right, so what are reviewers asked to consider? It depends on the journal, but typically it's these 5 things. So editors will want to know, does this fit the research journal? What is the significance of the research? What is the quality of the writing? Or really what they're asking, what is the quality of the argument? It's not so much of like the grammar and editing and like spell checking. It's really like what is the quality of the argument that they're trying to make? The soundness of the research methods and how it contributes to the field at large. So in terms of the decisions that you'll get back from the editor, it's usually 1 of 4, which is typical for most journals. It's either going to be accept, and that's going to be very rare that that happens. It's not often that an article would be perfect. That's just unheard of. At best, you'll probably get accept pending with revisions. So the editor is going to make some suggestions that you as the author has to consider. If you sort of agree with those revisions, you can make those changes and send it right back to the editor. And it's sort of assumed that if you make those changes, the editor will accept the paper for publication. What you'll maybe receive is a revise and resubmit. And sometimes, depending on the journal, they'll give a quality rating of this is a major revision or a minor revision. And if you don't see that language, you can typically tell by the editor's language of how they view the revisions that are necessary. You can do those revisions, but there's no guarantee that you will get accepted for that journal. So you really sort of have to take in the reviewers and the editors' feedback and make an argument of either why you're going to do those revisions and how you address those revisions. Typically, and I hate to say it, what you'll probably receive most is a reject. And you just kind of have to have thick skin and say, okay, why did I get a reject? So hopefully the editor has sent you some feedback from the reviewers. You can kind of get a sense of, are they understanding the argument that I'm trying to make? Do they understand the work? Maybe it was just a bad choice in journal. So you have to go somewhere else. If they're giving you feedback about the significance, then maybe you need to go down to a lower tier journal. Or if they're really pointing out flaws in the study itself, you may have to think about, could you address those flaws and like revise the paper, or are you really just going to have to find somewhere else to shop around with this paper? So those are usually the 4 types of feedback that you'll receive. All right. Can you maximize success? Yes. Do some reconnaissance. So look at the references that you have in your own paper. See, is that journal showing up fairly often? If not, then you may need to find a journal that you're actually also citing fairly frequently as well. Look at the editor board, right? Do you know the folks on that board? Would they understand the work that you're trying to do? And something just to be thoughtful about is just remember, you can only submit that paper to one journal at a time. Editors talk to each other. So you don't want to get in the case of like you submitted your paper to multiple outlets and they all find out they're considering the same paper. So just be very careful about that. That's sort of a ethical no-no that you want to do, don't want to do. Do your due diligence. So that just means make sure you've hit all of the journal's checklist, you've got your argument ready to go, there's no major grammar errors, you've asked maybe a mentor or a colleague to look over the paper. And I highly recommend just taking off what's called a cooling off period. So give yourself maybe 2 weeks to a month, don't look at the paper, and then come back and have some fresh perspective on it. I think having some time away definitely helps. And then just persevere, right? So most likely you'll probably get a reject, and that's okay. That's going to happen with the territory. So just develop a thick skin, and try again. Think about the feedback that the reviewers and the editors have given you, and think about, can I rework that paper? Can I address the concerns that they brought up? All right. Other advice, notice good writing, and then try to emulate it. So I know writers in my field that I respect, and I look at their writing and I study it. So it'll take time to figure out how do they craft their argument? How did they get their points across in a clear and informative and also an engaging way? Could I also emulate that in my own work? Ask colleagues to be part of editorial boards, or even ask to be an ad hoc reviewer. We didn't talk about that, but it's a reviewer that may not be in the initial review, but gets asked around in the second round. So ask if you could participate as an ad hoc reviewer. Anytime you're asked to be a reviewer, do a really good job, right? Because you want your name to kind of be out there as someone who's really thoughtful and critical about the field. And then try to serve on an editorial board as you get more experience later on. I think it's essential to find your critical colleagues. I know there's some colleagues that I can go to and they'll just say, oh, this is great. I love your work. It's awesome. But those are the ones that are not going to be helpful in the long run with publishing. I know there's folks that I can go to and they're going to be critical about my work. So I work with them pretty closely, and we try to help each other out. Develop a writing group, highly recommend, just for accountability purposes. And then identify your support network for rejection days. The support network might not be the same as your writing group, and it probably might not be the same as your critical friends. I try to find my support network outside of sort of the academia bubble. That can be really helpful, because they kind of give you perspective. They're like, this is not the end of the world. It's just a publication. It's fine. So they kind of help pull everything back in perspective. Just be careful about predatory journals. So journals will not contact you. You need to contact them. So if a journal is contacting you to publish, that's probably a red flag. All right. I will share these slides with you, but these are just some resources. I highly recommend the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. I don't know if you all know, but this is a subscription that you get for free as UAlbany graduate students. The one I want to point out is the Dissertation for Success curriculum. It's about a 12-week program. You can take it pretty much at any time. And it's really helpful to get into that daily writing practice. And there's other resources with that center, so go check it out. And I'll list some other resources on these slides that I'll send in the chat. All right.
Okay, we
list.
have 5 minutes for the question Q&A session. So if you have any question, please speak or just write down in the chat box. Okay, Cam, do you have question?
Yeah, so I find, my name is Kim. I'm EPL student, and it's I really find this is helpful, and I think I missed like few minutes earlier. I joined few minutes late. I am more interested about when you are saying about the rating of the journal, like 5, 4, 3, something like that. This is something I want to learn a little bit more about that. Can you explain about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different metrics. So you have like Web of Science, you have the Google like H5 index. So all of those metrics are going to be a little bit different. So in that slide, I think it was the Assessing Quality in Math Education Journal, it talks about 3 of those assessments or metrics in particular, and they have links to other papers about that. So you may want to look at that one to learn more just about those metrics. But typically in education, like an impact factor of around 5 is seen as sort of a high quality journal, like you're doing pretty good. Now, if you're in the field of like science or physics, that impact factor could be like somewhere in the teens or 20s. So it's really is like field relative. So
Quick follow-up. So where do we see that metrics factor? All the journal they publish on their website, or we need to check the different place?
yeah, for the most part, most journals will publish that on their website. It's usually under like the About Journal tab. So if you'll look there, that's probably where it will be posted.
Okay, Uli, yeah, it's your time.
I have a question, maybe not related to journal publications, but other publications. I wonder what is the difference between journal publications and reputable like chapter publications, because I feel like many chapters publication is more relevant for those who do research in a very niche topic, and journal publication is a little bit difficult to go through, especially if your topic is really not that popular in a Western community. And most of the time they were like, look off, what is this, ignoring this kind of topic. So I don't know, what is the difference between those two?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it, again, everything is so field dependent. But if I was looking at a published book chapter, I would want to know, is that book chapter peer reviewed in some way? That's sort of like the one check mark that I would look. The second thing, you can look at the publishing house, like who is that? If it's a university affiliated. So like I have a book chapter with Oxford University Press, right? That is a high quality, well-known international university and publishing house. So if you do get an invitation to publish in a book chapter, I think that's fine. You might probably likely get that invitation in your inbox. I would just see like, who is it? Like who's on that editorial board for that book? Do I recognize the faculty member or academics or researchers that are publishing that book or editing that book? And then where do they have their work? Like who is the publisher? And ideally you want it to be like a well-known like Springer, Oxford University Press, Chicago Press, something like that. But yeah, I think this will have similar status to a journal publication, but maybe not quite the same. But as long as you sort of have peer review, that's like top check that I would check off.
Okay, Tim, do you have a question? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I know you mentioned a couple of times about watching out for a journal that contacts you. So how would you feel if you received an email from a journal about an upcoming presentation you're giving at a conference, asking you to consider making that presentation into an article, that journal has an impact factor of 1.5, and I reference that articles from that journal a couple times in my work.
I
I'm
would
wondering how do you feel about that?
I would say, how well do you know this journal? And then it could be, you may be cutting yourself too short, right? So if you take your work and publish in this journal that has a 1.5, maybe your work is really at a 5 impact factor journal. So maybe moving from that 3rd tier journal that's like maybe trying to get your work to like improve their journal citation rating, maybe you're more of a 2nd tier, maybe you're more of a or top tier. So
yeah, I think that's interesting to consider, like when I'm like, seeking to get published, wanting to get published, do you go for that, 1.5 journal, or do you try to go higher then maybe get rejected? It's difficult. Yeah. Thank you. It's good to think about.
Okay, Jason.
Okay, so my question is maybe related to the next workshop by Dr. Bay. And I want to ask how important to publish in top journal to be a professional researcher in a field of education or science education. So yes, I just want to ask about that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're thinking about you want to be at a research institution, right? Having publications in a top tier journal is probably going to be the norm and probably what's going to be expected. Now, is that going to be something feasible before you go on the job market as a grad student? Maybe, maybe not. So if you think about the work in a top tier journal, right, those are usually often, not always, but usually supported by well-funded research projects, right? As a graduate student, maybe you're taking on a side piece on a faculty member's project that is well-funded. So yeah, maybe you could get in that top tier journal. Or maybe, you don't have a lot of resources as a grad student. So maybe you can't do those well-funded size research studies. Doesn't mean you can't be in a top tier journal. But just, I would, like, wherever you go, like I want to go to, let's say, Boston University. That's where I hope and dream to be a faculty member. I would go look at the faculty in that department and see, okay, in their first couple of years, maybe when they were in grad school, or maybe their first year as faculty, where were they publishing? And I would do that for a couple of institutions. Like, I'm interested in working here or here or here. Like, in those first couple of years, where were they publishing? And that would be probably a good indication for you of like where I need to shoot for.
Okay, Uri, do you have any follow-up question?
Yeah, actually piggybacking on Tim's comment before, I have a question regarding to no organizations, because I think lately many special interest group created in organizations, and they are making their own conference, and then they are also making their own journals. I was wondering how big it is to be part of the very first forefront of the researchers in those area. For example, now we have informal educations that it used to be only special interest. Now they're trying to make their own what is this journal, and then least commonly thought language. It used to be nowhere in educational research, but now most of professors are expected to publish and they create their own organizations. How do you think about participating in those very, very first organizations?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it's always, I think, something that you want to keep in balance, right? So depending on where you see yourself after, graduation, where you want to do, if you're participating in like starting up a new journal, and I know grad students and early career faculty that have done this, right? You sort of help form the direction of a particular journal. And then if you see yourself as publishing in that line of work and talking to that audience, you're sort of helping shaping this sort of new field and new direction for this journal. So that could be very productive for you in the long term, in a sense. But just be aware, maybe short term, you can help maybe shape this journal, but you may also need to find other little niches where you can do some publications kind of offshoot to support, you know, your tenure and promotion package or somewhere else that you're going as well. So just be mindful of that. You may have to think about, how would my institution look and perceive that? Could I find, you know, a mentor or somebody in my corner on my tenure and promotion review that would support that work, or like be able to articulate why this is important for your work? So just like be cautious. It's sort of this kind of catch-22.
Okay, Dong-yi.
Yeah, hi, professors. My question is, except for publishing articles, how can I get opportunities to like apply for the article reviewer?
Yeah, so I think a starting point would be like talking to your faculty advisor and just ask, hey, when you have a new review that comes in, can I also participate in that process? Usually they will speak to the editor and say, hey, I would like to have a grad student as an ad hoc reviewer. Would you mind doing that? And so that sort of gets your name on the editorial board. That's probably a common way that happens. I would say also like student ran journals. Those are also a good place to say, hey, can I review for you? Just reach out to the editorial board and they're more than likely will put you in the review pool. But yeah, you can request to be a reviewer at pretty much any of these journals. Usually if you go to like the About Journal tab, there's usually another section that says, you know, I'm interested in signing up and being a reviewer.
Thank you.
And
Is
also-
there any like a oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, just wanted to also add that since you're a first year student, it's also really fun to start from a conference proposal reviewers, because it's shorter, less responsibility, but you can kind of, you know, sense like, oh, this is, you know, what people are talking about, how they structure their argument, and, you know, it's not so much of like pressure, but it's but then you can still get the experience, and then you will get to know the people who actually work as an editor, maybe through, you know, that experience too. So that, and then you can do that very easily just by signing up at the on the website too.
So to get the opportunities to review the conference papers, is there any like a specific access in the website or something?
I'm sure. I don't know. Whenever I, you know, submit the paper, then, and also because I'm a maybe member, they, you know, just basically they always need more reviewers. So they always like, can you volunteer to review? There's always a link. So talk to your advisor. Then definitely, you know, it's easy to do it. It's really easy.
So you do mean that the professors usually have the like connect with this journal? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kim.
So actually, I don't have a question, but like I recently reviewed some of the conference paper. That's why I'm just sharing this information. So how I get that? So for example, I'm a member in the AERA. This is the organization, American Educational Research Organization. Particularly, I feel like that when I'm a member and they send the email through the listserv, and they announce like if you like to volunteer as a reviewer, just sign up for that. That way you can get, I think that's one of the way.
Okay, if there is no question, we will move on to the job market preparation. Okay, Dr. Beck, yeah, it's your time. I just 1 minute. Okay.
Okay, so let's say you publish so many articles, you're ready to go, and now what? So I didn't prepare any PowerPoint, but I prepared a Google Doc that you can go to. So try the link that I just shared, see if you have access. This access, you can just only comment. You cannot make edits. So you can make a copy, so you can make notes or change however you want, or you can make comments, and then if you have any questions, we can just do that too. So I'm gonna share my screen. This one. Yep. So you're looking at my ETAP job market. Okay, great. So this document is something that I had from when I was an IU student. Hi, my name is Haesol. I feel like I haven't met everyone here, but I'm also a new faculty, just like Jonathan. We were hired together, and I used to be IU graduate and also Indiana University. Also, I worked there as a postdoc. So a lot of knowledge, information is all from this place. And then I asked them and they're like, oh, please share with them. And I made some updates. So feel free to share as well. And also you can, keep it as for your record. So caveat 1, this information is very, it's our opinions, it's highly subjective. So, and a lot of things like that, but this especially job search, job market, it really depends on you, what you want, your life, and also your field, your dissertation, what your priority is, location. There are so many different variables. So, it really depends, but this is just something that I can share. And please, I'm going to go really quickly so we can have more a question and answer. And then caveat 2, ETAP faculty are all tenure track faculty, and that is our specialization because it's an R1 university, and when you graduate with a PhD degree, you may also want to pursue this. So this document is about tenure track faculty. So if you want something else, of course, that's a great opportunity as well, but I'm not really familiar with that. So that's also caveat 2. So what kinds of jobs are out there? Research-oriented tenure track. So TT, we call it TT, or AP job assistant professor. And then this is kind of a position that ETAP faculty, we all have. The expectation is typically 50% research, 40% teaching, and 10% service. So the teaching load is about 2, meaning 2 classes per semester. And then there's also postdoctoral researcher or research scholar or research scientist here. They're kind of the similar rank. I was actually a research scientist, so I was a staff member, and then I got a raise and stuff. But anyway, it's pretty similar. They are typically 1 to 3 years, and the goal is to hire someone qualified to help the research, like a project manager, or doing analysis and also mentoring graduate students too. But I will say postdoc is kind of in between jobs to get the tenure track job, so that's postdoc. And then there's also teaching position at a 4-year college, and if you have a strong teaching background, and if you're really interested in this, then this is for you. But this is not usually an ETAP program students will look for, but this is something definitely you can also look for. Industry, the sky's the limit. There are so many positions available, especially if you're doing CDIT, instructional technology, instructional design. There are so many jobs. I want to say they even get paid better than me. But there are many jobs. Testing companies like ETS, museums, they also have a learning design, experiential design sectors and stuff. So, and then of course, like Amazon, these big companies, Apple, they all have learning scientists, or HR also hires, training specialists, stuff like that. So that's also all what we can do. Then tips for thinking about your path, the emotions that come with the process. So how do I look for jobs? Listservs, you can definitely join these lists, mailing lists in ARA, special, I don't know if you're not familiar with this, SIG, I call it SIG, it means special interest group. So SIG has this SIG has like, I think it has a lot of SIGs in ARA, learning science, instructor technology. There are many, many different SIG that you can join, and they have a, special mailing list that also provides a lot of information about like awards and also job search, job positions too. And websites. I did a lot of Chronicle Higher Ed, their ISA website. There are many, many websites that you can go to. Even Facebook groups that are associated with conferences, they always post jobs too. So look for those. It's not easy to not to find. It's really, and also a lot of people do share, like if I find something that oh, maybe this student might be very interested in or have a good fit, then I'll definitely share. So especially for this type of website, make sure to have a AI, what is I forget the name now, like agent setup, so you can pre-fill those what your interest is, tenure track, or where you can even select the location that you want. Then whatever comes up, it will just send it to you, or it will automatically send you the update like every week or every day, so you will not miss it. Oh, I already talked about social networks. So when should I look for a job? So for me personally, when I was a first year, I was just busy taking classes and like I just kind of avoided to just thinking about this. But when you know better, then you might be able to prepare better. But there's it really up to what type of person you are, right? So but usually it's good to know the timing cycle. So tenure track job, the posting starts early fall, so sometimes even like August, September. And postdoctoral jobs usually throughout the year sometimes, because they just post whenever they get the grant. But lots of times usually at the later time in spring. So when the tenure track job is posted in early fall, then positions are, then you will, I'll just get to it later, but then that is a position for the next year. So for example, if something is posted now, fall 2023, then it's a job for 2024. Teaching position, research scientist, and the postdoc are really similar. Teaching position is late summer and early mid-fall, so it's really similar. Industry, as you can tell, it's just whenever they want to post, it will be always there. There's something you can always post. Apply. So what does my resume or CV need to look like? So before I start PhD, I didn't even know what CV means or what CV, that word CV, but now I know it's really important in our field. Typically it's an academic CV, so it's really long. I don't know, somehow longer the better. And it includes education, publications, research positions, if you've got any awards, honors, professional membership, service, you list all of those. Publications are, of course, the most important thing. That's why, Jonathan talked about all of these. And then that's how people can see, very quickly. It's really easy to see like where we publish. That's how they just quickly skim and okay, let's interview this person. And then, so that's CV. How do I apply for a job? Very easy. You just they always apply, post a link that you can click to, then you just go to the school website, make your account, and just start filling in. But then each university requires a little bit different format of documents. So, but it always starts from cover letter, research statement, teaching statement, diversity statement, CV, writing samples, usually 2 to 3. It's better if it's first authored, and list of references, usually 3 people. And then a lot of times, the universities don't ask the reference letters Leah. So, okay, bye-bye. So, Leah, you wanna stay here? Okay, she's gonna cry. Okay, so sorry. So they don't ask for the references, even the letters, until you are selected for the top 3. So you have to have the list, who, the name and the email, but you don't have to get the letters until you get the top 3. So that was a good thing. But still, some universities require to submit those letters, and I personally didn't like those. And then when you are in the top 3, they will also make phone calls to them. I'm so sorry. It's because it's an evening time. And okay, why don't you go? Okay, thank you. Leah. Oh my God. Okay, why don't you say hi? Say hi.
Hi, Leah.
Okay, good.
We gotta go.
Okay, go. Okay, so that's the cover letter. I mean, no, reference letters. But all these teaching statement, research statement, diversity statement, some universities require separate documents. Some universities just require only one, or you just have to mash everything in the cover letter. So it really depends on what they want. Then something that I wanted to mention was the networking. So a lot of times I did get a lot of job information through my network. And then, so I think network is important. Also it's meaningful and it's fun. So conferences are great places to start. And then, so I just put up here. So you can definitely start talking right after your presentation or poster. If somebody, asks questions, I'll talk to them, or follow your advisor, meet their colleagues, and like have lunch or something. That was a really good sign for me. And then sometimes you get to meet the people that you cite. Then like, oh, I read about, your article. And then they sometimes say, oh, so you are interested in this research. We actually have openings, or why don't you apply? So that sometimes happens too. And of course, attend specific SIG or divisions business meetings or university receptions, especially during ARA, so you can meet other people too. Or just randomly start chatting with folks in the hallway. So I like doing that too. So now, yeah, this is my professional life. Okay, so now so there are, oh my God, Leah. Oh my God, this doesn't really happen, but now because, oh, she can maybe stay. Okay. She should just stay. Okay. Okay. So now after you apply for the job, after you pass the first screening, then you will get an invitation to the Zoom interview. We also call it you are long listed. Usually they invite 9 to 10 people for the Zoom interview. And then this is about 20-minute to 30-minute of Zoom interview. Also, the old professors call it phone interview because they call it, they used to just do a phone interview, but nowadays it's usually Zoom. And actually, for me once, even though it was Zoom interview, the research chair said, turn off your camera. So they wanted to do it as a phone interview. So I thought it was really, really interesting. So this is just 20 to 30 minutes, just, general information or, things about you for your research, teaching, mentorship experience, or grant writing experience. And then this is something that you can talk about that was not reflected in your cover letter or CV, to show who you are. And then personally, what I felt like was it was important to kind of let them know that, I'm a good person to collaborate with. I'm going to be a good colleague. That's something that I thought, I wanted to make sure that they know. And then, so when you are long listed among 9-10 people, after the interview, within a week or two, you'll get another email saying, hey, good job. Now you're shortlisted. meaning you are the top 3. So it can be either 2 or 3, sometimes 2 or sometimes 3. And then you're gonna get an invitation for the campus visit. So and then I'm sure many of you guys have seen the job talk for me or Jonathan, but a lot of university has a very similar structure, but of course it's really also different depending on the school. And also I actually didn't get to do any teaching demo, but some school does ask for the teaching demo. I've seen a lot. So that's campus visit. We can talk about it more. And this is something interesting, I thought. So what will they ask to my references when they call? So they do ask how's their teaching, and then they do ask about their like the fit with their pre-existing projects. So here's my project about problem-based learning using whatever, but how do you think this candidate a good fit with this project? So that's something that we'll be interested in knowing. So basically it's about like, are they good to work with? So that's what I figured. Other tips nowadays, it's internet. Internet has everything. So it's really good to have a basic website of your you as a scholar, and then start adding stuff in that can show your scholarship publications and basic like teaching experiences and stuff like that. And I do have mine is haesolbay.com. And then I noticed that I just stopped updating right after I got this job. So it still says anyway, so I just noticed, and oh my God, I need to update. So that's the reality. So I thought that was so funny. Anyway, so I'll just stop here so we can just keep talking about this, because it's better to just have a question and answer. Do we already have questions?
Do you have any question? Do you guys? Okay, if nobody
got a
have a
quick-
question. Oh, okay,
Well, I
please.
just got a quick one. At what point did you start like actively applying for the jobs? Was it in the fall of like a year in advance?
So I did. So my situation was a little bit strange because I did defend, but I got an offer for the postdoc. So at that time, I actually didn't have my degree, but then I started applying too. But I was thinking I wouldn't get a good chance. So basically, I did start applying when I was close to being done. But then the first year, I didn't get the tenure track job offer. But then I was a postdoc at the time. And then in my second year of postdoc, I started again, and then I got this one. So, and what I noticed is some do like get a job tenure track job right away, but then they usually get R2 rank. But I got really lucky with this one, but then also I spent 2 years as a postdoc before. So I don't know what, yeah. So does everyone know what a postdoc? Jonathan, can you explain what it is? I'm sorry, because Leah.
Yeah, so that's something that I didn't know going into grad school. I was like, what's a postdoc? And we had one at Georgia, and I was just like, who are you? What are you? Like, what does a postdoc do? So typically that's somebody who has completed their PhD. They go to another institution for another year, or it could be up to 3 years. And they're really there to help move a research project forward. So you can think of them as like a really advanced grad student, right? They're going to have a lot of responsibilities of like project management, leading the project, maybe help with a lot of data collection and analysis. But it's someone that like a PI or professor doesn't have to worry about. Like they know they have the skills that's needed. But you're also given a chance to get mentorship. Sometimes it's with that faculty member that you're working under, or it could just be mentorship at like the university level. You'll typically have opportunities to not only do research, but typically maybe beef up your teaching. So for example, if you didn't have an opportunity to teach at UAlbany, for example, you could do a postdoc, get some teaching experience there, and then go back on the job market. As somebody that has done the postdoc experience, I highly recommend it. So I think if you had spoken to me in my first or second year, I'd be like, postdoc, I don't want to do that. That just seems like more school. I'm like, no, that's crazy. But really, it's very beneficial. It gives you time and space. Like as soon as you come out of your PhD, you're like just so worn down. It gives you a year or two just to kind of like reset, refocus yourself, think about what it is that I actually really want to do. Like, what is my passion? And it gives you time to like step away from your dissertation a little bit. Don't step away too far, but give yourself 3 or 4 months and then go back to it. You have a fresh perspective again, like that cooling off period, and you can start writing on your dissertation again and maybe send it out for a few publications.
Okay,
Thanks so
Jason.
much. I just have a follow-up related to that. When I attended the job talks, you know, that you went through, something that really jumped out was like the clear, like academic portfolio that you like everything is coherently kind of linked to one thing and one message. Do you think that coming out of today's session, we could maybe set up a working group as a community to start to work together to maybe think about like articulating and putting together our own research, you know, like a portfolio, or like how we can frame it, and then maybe that could be supported. Perhaps you don't need to be so involved, but like if you could oversee it and give us tips. But like if anybody else is interested, I'd be interested to like work as a group to try and, you know, have that as like a something working in the background. I don't know what.
Yeah, I think that was
interested
great.
in that.
I did that at Georgia. Like we got a couple of grad students together and we invited faculty. Like every time we met, like a different faculty member would come in. I have some of those materials already too. So if y'all want to like take them, use them, adapt them, or if you, I mean, you just let us know, I guess, how involved you want us to be, but you're more than welcome to those materials. And I think if you ask any of the faculty, like I would be interested, like especially some of the faculty that have been at UAlbany for a while and have done a couple of search committees, like I think they would have a lot of feedback to offer you about what makes a good candidate and what doesn't.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Okay, Jason.
So I'm from ETAP, as you know. So I'm just want to ask about how important about having teaching career. So I'm just working as a research assistant in my just institution, but is TA experience is important for the job market, or any teaching background as a kind of high school teacher is important? Actually, I have as a teaching career as a high school and middle school teacher back in my country, but I don't have experience in this country, US. So I'm just worried about, is it important to get a job in this country? So yeah, that's my question.
yeah, I think I'm gonna reply in 2 ways. If you're someone that thinks you're going to stay in the US or interested in staying in the US, I would definitely try to get as much experience as I could in US classrooms. Now, that could be part of your research, right? If you're interested in classroom discourse and science, maybe you go collect some data in a US classroom. Like you can pitch yourself as having teaching experience in the US through that way, right? In terms of like teaching experience itself, I know there's some departments, they will not consider you if you don't have some sort of teaching experience. Now, what they count as teaching experience, sometimes if it's really a teaching focused institution, they want K-12 experience, and they also want at the higher ed institute as well. So depending where you go and where you want to apply to, like I said, you know, go look at that institution. if they have a job ad that comes out, maybe it's not in your particular field, but maybe it's in like special education, right? See what's in that job ad, see what might be the non-negotiables for that institution. And then you can think about like, how can I develop experiences that would make me more marketable in a sense.
Okay, Tam, do you have question?
Yeah, so my question is a follow-up related to the postdoc. So we discussed that for other like the job post, particularly for the teaching position, we see different like the job post platform. How about the postdoc? They also publish in the same way, or sometimes we need to reach out to like the certain universities? And also another related question, like I think all the universities may not have like the postdoc position. So how do we find which type of university we need to research and where we can research?
Yeah, especially for the field of education, like I would say like 10 years ago, postdocs were not very common. They're now becoming more common. And I think honestly right now, because there's been like this shift in education, it's been hard to get folks to apply to postdoc position because they think of it as sort of a waste of 2 years. I don't frame it in that way at all. I think it's a chance for you to really think about who you are as a scholar and what you want to accomplish, and really get some more experience. It could be teaching, it could be research, it could be like whatever you need, maybe to get a few more publications out to make yourself more marketable on the job market. And I don't, Dr. Bay, you can speak about this too, but like, I feel like having that postdoc experience made me more marketable. Like I was getting way more Zoom interviews, more on-campus interviews, like everything was just starting to click more after the postdoc.
Yeah, also I wanted to add that postdoc is, I can be wrong, but postdoc was more like through network. The positions were shared through network because, and also sometimes they don't even post somewhere because, you know, for example, I just got a really big grant for my NSF grant, and then I know exactly who I want to work with, or I know so-and-so has a like really good student who is just graduating, then I'm going to just reach out to them. So the important part for the postdoc is, you know, it's kind of like good to know that like, you know, you will start noticing like some names that you really want to work with or you want to learn from. Then you will know, you know, those names more, and then you will know, you will be looking at their lab website, and or you will hear like some news about, oh, Dr. So-and-so just got a grant, then they will definitely, you know, find a postdoc. Then that's the time that you can email, introduce yourself. So postdoc is a little bit different than tenure track job search, I think. But I don't know how you, Jonathan, did, but for me, it was just personal connection. So yeah.
It's a little bit different, but you still have to like tailor that letter. You still have to talk about yourself as a scholar. They're still going to ask you about your dissertation. Now, the cycle of a postdoc is a little different. So for a tenure track faculty job, that's going to start somewhere like early fall. Most job positions are out by October, November. With the postdoc, that's going to be like this sort of second and third wave. That's usually coming out around March, April, that kind of timeline. And for a graduate student that's graduating, right, probably most likely your dissertation is really starting to come together and you're like finishing up, you're defending maybe around March and April. So you really have a clear mindset of like, yep, I'm going to be done and I can start this postdoc, you know, in the summer and the fall. So I think it's really beneficial, like timeline wise, for grad students.
Okay, Uli, it's your turn.
I wonder about the postdoc position itself. Is it commonly just 2 years kind of positions, or there is actually a specific positions for a researcher without teaching at the university? Because so far I never seen like a real researcher only at the university. They have to teach at some point, but I don't know. I wonder if there is those kind of positions, and is it similar with postdoc?
Yes, there are. So there are, so for example, when I was at UVA, we called them research assistant professors or research associate professors. And their main job was just research. So they had no teaching responsibilities. The catch-22 with that is you are funding your own salary for the most part. So the university will give you like maybe your first 2 or 3 years to like get you started, but then like day one, you're applying for grants. You're trying to find your next paycheck in a sense, because as soon as that initial funding runs out, you don't have a salary anymore. So you're basically self-sustaining your own salary. So it might be a project that you're starting off the ground. You may be helping other faculty members get their projects off the ground. So yeah, you could be entirely research. You just have to sort of be mindful of like you're funding your own salary with that.
Also, there are many research these days, like educational research institutions as well. So Friday Institute, NCSU has a lot of, they call it research scholar. And also you can link in Jonathan, like Digital Promise. They have like, they are all research scholars, or they are not called professors, but they do very, very similar things, but they don't teach. So that's something that you can definitely also look at as well.
And there's a lot of education research centers like West Ed, AIR, SRI. A lot of these institutions, they all just do research. So you don't have to be in academia to do educational research.
Okay, so now it's a kind of different session because this workshop, the final component of this workshop is the question from faculty to your guys. So does your faculty member have any question? Have any question to the students?
I think the survey that you gave us was really helpful in answering a lot of my questions. Dr. Bay, do you have any?
So based on what we just talked about, what is the most, I don't know, interesting or concerning thing for you right now?
For me, based on my experience, most of the PhD students know the importance of the publication and job market preparation, but sometimes they are overwhelmed by their coursework and by the kind of work outside of their coursework. And sometimes they clearly know it is important, but their mindset is kind of, I know it is very important, but I don't have time to do that. So do you guys have any practical tip to break this kind of mindset?
Yeah, I would point you to the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. And one of the things that they talk about is every semester has to have a plan. So what are you going to do? Honestly, they'll make you plan out every single day for that semester. And what are your goals? And making sure that those goals are, in a sense, measurable. So if you want a publication out for that semester, what are you going to do from A to Z? And they'll walk you through sort of that thought process. How do you plan that out? So I would say just start small. So if your goal is to write a publication this year, maybe it's just a conference proceeding. That's fine. Think through the steps of how you're going to get that done. Once the conference proceeding gets out, think about how can I take that conference proceeding and then turn it into a publication. So I think one of the resources that I left was like, it's a book. It's called How to Write Your Article in 12 Weeks. But basically the starting point is you have this idea or you have a conference proceeding and you're taking that publication or that proceeding and thinking about how to turn it into a publication. And that sort of works within the nice semester system, right? You think about 12 weeks. A semester is typically, 14 to 15 weeks. So give yourself a week to plan everything out, and then you've got the rest of the semester to really meet what your goals are.
Great systematic, perspective. And also you can just think every paper has a home. Rejected, rejected, rejected. Eventually it will find a home. And then you will also find your home too. Like you will get hired. You will eventually go somewhere. So something that I kept still also, for the tenure, I guess, but I kept thinking about, why do I want to do this? What type of, message or impact do I want to make to, with this like PhD or job? So whenever I get, I don't know, depressed, or, sometimes you just get so tired. And I think about that very core, question, like, why do I want to do this? How can I contribute? Then that does kind of keep me like, okay, I don't have to be so sad now. I don't know, be positive and try to remember why, I wanted to do that. I thought that was really helpful. And in the end, it is what it is. You'll get it. So having that type of relaxed, I don't know, mindset really helped me. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you have, breakthroughs. Sometimes I get rejection letters. So I think it's really important to just be patient and be kind to yourself and just be, I don't know, positive and happy. Then be systematic and all of that too.
Okay, another question is that someone in survey looking for the way to find a collaborator, especially find a reliable collaborator. Do you have any tips to find a good collaborator?
I think it's just being courageous to like put yourself and your ideas out there. I feel like all of my collaborations have just been sort of, I wasn't seeking it out, but I was just like, I'm going to try this new idea, or like, I have this idea that I want to talk about and share with others. It's not fully formed yet, but like, let me just start speaking about it. And so I presented at a conference, or a graduate student workshop or something like that. So it's been sort of organic. I feel like you just have to kind of be brave, put your ideas out there, see who responds to it, and then maybe put your heads together and think, what can you make out of it?
And also, that's a really good point. I mean, question, because you guys are all collaborators to each other. So I think through PhD, you form your network, and, your mentor, we are going to collaborate together. When you become professors, we can write grants together. So we are the collaborators. And then I feel like the biggest challenge and also strength of my PhD journey was to find out who I can work with, who I can really write with. And then I really like your point, Jonathan, like about who can give you what did you say? What was the term? Critical review.
Like critical
Yeah, critical friend. Sometimes it's hard to do it because I don't know how to say it, but if you do have a good collaborative relationship, you will be able to give feedback and like talk about it. And I think that is a part of our job, and being in academic. So what you're doing is going to be a great foundation for your collaboration. And like I'm not, and like still me too, like I'm still talking to my people through my postdoc and my PhD, so that will be a good way.
Just shared a database that I started for people to add their own like research interests too. And then you can have a look at the database and see if there's anybody with similar research interests and contact. And also please spread the database so we can get more people on there. Because like it's it's difficult. I found it difficult too to like find other people to work with. But then occasionally, I found like the easy bit is like when you, as Jonathan said, that authentic connection. It's always been impossible if you say let's collaborate and then all right, what we're going to write about. This has always been like an awkward way to do it. Whereas if you genuinely have the interest, it's easier, I think. So like have a look at the database and see if there's anybody else there with similar research interests. And also please share it too. We can make it bigger.
I feel like share your work with each other. And I hope you guys are doing that or have space to do that, because honestly, that's how I started some of the writing projects, is like I would have an argument with another graduate student about these ideas and be like, well, if you think you can do it better, then let's think about this together. So it's really like through argumentation, we like came up with something better and we wrote a paper about it. So I hope you're sharing your work with each other.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Do you have any other question? Okay, if not, yeah, let's end this workshop. Thank you for coming, Dr. Bay and Dr. Foster, Dr. Jonathan. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And reach out anytime if you need anything, okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Have a
John.
Friday
Okay.
night.
It was
Thank you,
really
YangHyun.
Bye bye. I will upload the recording, yeah, later. Bye bye.